Powered by the Montana Television Network. This is the 530 News on Q2, Montana's news leader.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. I'm Russ Riesinger.
And I'm Jeanelle Slade. The Keystone XL pipeline expected to bring jobs to Montana, but also possible protests.
Now, two groups say they're concerned about any possible plans the state might have to crack down on protesters if the pipeline is built, and they're taking legal action.
The American Civil Liberties Union wants to know how the state of Montana plans to handle any protests if they do happen.
The ACLU says state agencies are withholding this information. Q2's David J. joins us now to explain. David?
Oh, Russ, Jeanelle, the ACLU says the complaint is about the right to know and also the First Amendment. It wants information about state agencies' plans in the event of a demonstration about the Keystone XL pipeline. The concerns for the state and the ACLU come about partly from the protest from the Dakota Access Pipeline. The Standing Rock Sioux and the Cheyenne River Sioux tribes, whose reservations are near the pipeline route, argued against that project. Now, the complaint is against the Montana Disaster and Emergency Services and the Montana Division of Criminal Investigation. The ACLU states in its filing that both agencies have not produced requested documents or documents have been heavily redacted. According to the ACLU, federal agencies are contemplating closing property around the Fort Peck Dam, and this would impede free speech and free association.
We are concerned that certain government agencies might be actively trying to inhibit protest activity, even though protests are a First Amendment right. You have the right to exercise free speech, and if you choose to exercise that right through a protest, it is not illegal. We are concerned that there may be tactics being used to prohibit activists from protesting.
We contacted the Department of Justice, which says this is a matter of pending litigation and it does not have a comment at this time. Lillian Alvarez expects a state response in the next 45 days. Russ?
All right, thanks so much, David. Well, Northwestern Energy has now filed a formal request with the Montana Public Service Commission to increase its share in the Colstrip coal plants, a 25% increase for the cost of $1. Now, the document was filed yesterday in Helena. The Montana-based utility is planning to buy out co-owner Puget Sound Energy's stake of 185 megawatts in Colstrip's units 3 and 4. Now, that would increase its total share in the plant to 55%. Northwestern officials say they desperately need new power resources to feed growing regional demand, which will help offset price fluctuations in the energy market. Environmental groups such as the Sierra Club have criticized that plan, saying ratepayers may be getting the power cheap, but they're also going to be buying high maintenance and operating costs for the aging units in a market swinging away from coal. Now, power plants two oldest units, 1 and 2, shut down at the beginning of this year. The Public Service Commission is scheduled to discuss this latest proposition next Tuesday.
Another vaping-related illness case has been confirmed in Montana. According to Montana health officials, they've now identified 8 cases so far, including one that resulted in a death. DPHHS says the new case involves a person from Cascade County in their 20s. They have a history of vaping and were hospitalized in January. And nationally, ER visits related to vaping are down after a spike back in August and September of 2019. But state health leaders say they are still working with federal and local agencies to investigate lung injuries associated with e-cigarette products.
Well, Montana reported 3 flu-related deaths in the last week of January.
This after just 1 death since the beginning of flu season in October. The Montana Department of Health and Human Services says that flu activity throughout Montana remains widespread, with every county reporting at least 1 case of influenza. In all, the state saw nearly 1,000 cases alone in the final week of January, and the total number is now more than 4,000 for the season.
186 people have been hospitalized by the virus. Yellowstone County has seen 58 new cases and is at nearly 500 for the season. Now, Gallatin County, where Bozeman is, leads the state in flu cases with more than 800.
And for those of you who are concerned about the coronavirus in our area, Riverstone Health confirms there are still no cases here in Montana.
Riverstone Health advises, as always, maintain good hand wash health and avoid people who are ill. To avoid rumors, the latest CDC findings on the coronavirus can be found on the front page of riverstonehealth.org. Well, animals also are not immune to sickness and disease. Fish, Wildlife and Parks tells us that more than 140 animals tested positive for chronic wasting disease this season. Wildlife managers tested nearly 7,000 samples between April 1st and January 29th. 86 white-tailed deer, 53 mule deer, 2 moose, and 1 elk tested positive. Chronic wasting disease is an always fatal neurological disease that affects deer, elk, and moose. There is no known transmission of CWD to humans. However, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention recommends not eating the meat of an infected animal.
Montana's gubernatorial race has been attracting a lot of attention and campaign money in the state so far this year. But we also have our eyes on the U.S. Senate and U.S. House races. MTN's Mike Dennison has been drilling down on the money in those races and tells us what he found.
In Montana's U.S. Senate race, Republican incumbent Steve Daines continues to roll up a huge fundraising lead, with 17 times the money of his nearest potential competitor. He raised $6.6 million through December and still has $5 million in the bank. More than a third of Daines' money, $2.3 million, has come from political action committees, representing mostly business interests. Only about 1/5 of his money is from individual Montanans. The fundraising leader among the Democratic candidates is political newcomer Cora Newman of Bozeman, who raised $460,000 over the last 3 months of 2019. Almost half that money, $212,000, came from donors in California and New York. Bringing up the rear on the money chase in the Senate race are Democrats Wilmot Collins, who raised $232,000, and John Muse at $130,000. In the race for Montana's open U.S. House seat, Democrat Kathleen Williams and Republican Matt Rosendale are the runaway fundraising leaders, with each already over $1 million. But their donor profiles are quite different. While both are getting money from across the country, Williams has raised much more from inside Montana. She lists more than 2,000 donations from Montanans, totaling $627,000, or 54% of her total. She also has $300,000 from unnamed donors giving smaller amounts, and a good chunk of those funds are likely from Montana, too. Rosendale lists only 106 donations from Montanans, totaling $166,000, or 15% of his total. He also has about $100,000 from unnamed donors. At least a third of his money is from donors in 3 states, California, Texas, and Florida. Most of the other 5 Republicans in the race are well behind Rosendale when it comes to money. The only other Democrat in the race, State Representative Tom Winter of Missoula, has raised a respectable $265,000 through December, but Williams still has 6 times the money in her campaign account. Now, money isn't the only metric to measure a campaign, but with several candidates well out front in campaign cash, we'll see this year if the underdogs can make a run at the leaders. In Helena, Mike Dennison, MTN News.
Well, Senator Daines' campaign says 88% of his donations are less than $200 and that he's received more than 20,000 of those donations.
Well, even though the historic impeachment trial of President Trump is done, its political aftermath will remain a hot topic as the elections unfold.
It's also the subject of MTN's Face the State this weekend with chief political reporter Mike Dennison and 2 experts examining the process and the future. 2 professors of political science from Carroll College, Jeremy Johnson and Alex Street, will dissect the impeachment process and discuss how it may affect state and national elections this year.
While impeachment may be considered a scandal, Street says President Trump has shown himself to be remarkably resilient when it comes to surviving traditional scandals.
But President Trump has this style where he's scandal-proof because it seems like he's been able to spin each of those as an example of him being, I'm not your typical politician. I'm outside of the establishment, I'm doing things differently. I'm not hypocritical in the same way that a lot of those politicians are when they kind of pretend to be like this, but we know they're like that. I never claim to be one of them. No wonder I have scandals.
And Face the State airs this Sunday at 9:30 in the morning right here on Q2.
Well, it's National Wear Red Day. Millions come together on the first Friday of every February to celebrate American Heart Month.
Yeah, a lot of people seeing red today. That tradition ignites a wave of red from coast to coast and unites millions of people for a common goal: the eradication of heart disease and stroke, and to raise awareness about cardiovascular disease in women.
Doctors say stress can be a major risk factor for women, and this movement is on a mission to end heart disease and stroke in women. Well, there's more news from across our state tonight on the MTN 9 o'clock news. Join me on the CW as we take you to the starting line of a big sled dog race in the middle of Montana. We'll have that and more tonight at 9.
But first, still to come on tonight's 5:30 news, we're going to hit the ice and drop in a line, find out why ice fishing is so vital to the state of Montana.
And later in sports, how one Belgrade athlete overcame a near amputation to return to the court tonight.
And coming up in weather, another batch of snow moved into the Billings area today. How much did we get and how much did everyone else get in the last couple of days? We'll have some shocking numbers for you coming up.
You're watching MTN News with Jeanelle Slade and Russ Riesinger. Storm Tracker weather with Bob McGuire. And sports with Scott Breen. This is the 5:30 news on Q2, Montana's news leader.